We'll be starting shortly. This is just a quick sound test. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Members Monday number 3. This is for members, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm trying to create some value for you using Excel VBA so that you can do more in your career, using Excel VBA and move your career forward. It sounds like I can't speak today. Anyway, so thank you to Bart. So Bart has sent me in a file today, and this example is so instructive. Working with multiple files in Excel VBA. So you have one file you're working in, you want to look in another file and do some analysis. That is a typical example of manual work. How much time have you spent opening one file, finding some information, closing a file? God, those seconds it takes for Excel to open a new file. That really gets annoying. So we can do it at the click of a button using Excel VBA. Go to another file, do some analysis, how many values, sum up some numbers, whatever it might be, and then put that information into the original file. This is what we're going to look to do. Let me know, Bart, because this is your example. Does that sound useful to you? Who else we've got in the chat? We've definitely got a couple of others in the chat. I can see from the numbers, so make sure you say hello, and thank you so much for your membership of the channel. So I'm going to get straight into this, although I say that every week and I never get straight into it. Let's try to get straight into this. We've got the VBA editor here. Now, have you seen this code before? This is code to open another file in Excel VBA. That's what we want to do, of course. We're working with another file. Good evening, Bob. Welcome to the chat. Right, I'm going to go ahead and run this code. So try to work along if you can. Try to type in some of this code in the VBA editor, see if you can get it working. So I'm going to hit the F8 key now. We're going to assign a value to a string variable, and we'll go through this in more detail in a second. Now, this is the magic line of code that's going to open another workbook. So when this line of code executes, we can see we've got another workbook open here. And then I've got a final line of code that's going to assign a value to this variable, which is called other file. Now, these are the main features of our code that we're going to use to work through this example. But first, I want to show you this file, and let me know in the chat, so Bob or Bart or anybody else who's tuning in, what questions do you have? Give me some questions to answer about this file. So we've got a data file. This file is actually from the Excel VBA Real World Example Series Season 2, which is now on the channel. We've got 2 videos out, I think. So let me know, and particularly Bart, what kind of questions would you want to answer? Say that this is the data file that you're working with. And let me know in the chat, and then in the live stream, we'll try to answer some of these questions. Right, let's go back to our original file. Now, as always, if you're working with multiple files, you've got to be careful about a few things. Firstly, which file is the active file? Just like we've got to be careful which sheet is the active sheet when we're working within a file. It gets more complicated. We've got another layer of complication when we're working with multiple files. So make sure you're aware which one the active file is. And at the same time, just as important, make sure you're putting the code in the right file. We can see this code is in module 1 here, and module 1 is in the control file. So I can see it's in the right file. We wouldn't want it in the data file. So just two things to bear in mind there. I'm going to go back to the data file. Alt F4, just close the file. There we go. So let's go through this code. Now, this code is only going to work if you have two files in the same folder. So Bart has just said, can I go to a link in SharePoint? So if you want to go to somewhere else or to a link in SharePoint, you've got to take the address, the folder address from Windows Explorer. Let me just try to show you what I mean here. So for example, I've got a folder here, and you've got to do something with this address up here. Okay, this is the vital information. You're going to use this information to get Excel VBA to the right place on your computer or on SharePoint or on a shared drive. Okay, but we're not going to go into detail in this live stream. The setup that I'm advocating, and this is how I set up all of my files when I'm trying to do this, is having the two files in the same folder. You can see we've got control file here and data file here. Now, if we have that set up, it means we can use this line of code here, which is this workbook.path. And let me just prove to you what's going on here. Let's say .path test. And then the good old message box. This workbook .path. Okay, super useful line of code. This workbook means the workbook that this code is living in. So that's why it's important that you make sure you put the code in the right place. Let's go ahead, test this, F8 key. Now, how cool is that? So this shows us that Excel VBA knows the path, and we just saw a path in Windows Explorer, knows the path of the active workbook. So if you have the path, then you can say to Excel, open a different file name, but I know the file is in this location. So use the same path as this file, but we're going to open a different file name. This is how it's working. So if you have this setup, specifically this setup here, let me just see Bob's question. Oh, Bob, you seem to have answered your own question. Yeah, which part of the code states the file name you're opening? Yeah, great question, Bob. I know I've got good students here because you're prompting me to move on to the next part of the presentation. Here you've got range C3. So what's going on here? Well, Bob asked the question. Bob, do you want to answer the question in the chat? This is, of course, the name of the file that we're going to open. Let's go back to Windows Explorer. We can see we've got a file in here that's called data file. So as usual, with code, we have to be super careful with spelling. If we have one character inaccurate, this is going to create an error. And I have found when I've been doing this kind of thing for clients, there's system to system differences. So this can be super frustrating as a VBA developer. Code that works on one system, on Windows, on one system, doesn't work on Windows on another system. What's that all about? It's absolutely crazy. And one of the system to system differences I've seen is some systems want you to put the file extension in here. I've got a client who has all of his files on a VPN, a virtual private network. He needs the file extension. Okay, so you're going to have to test. Most of the time, you don't need the file extension. If that doesn't work, try it with the file extension. How do you know the file extension? Well, when you save the file, you can choose whether you save it as .xlsm, which is macro enabled, or another format. So that's how you can understand the file extension. So this means we have this super flexible setup, so we can put the file name in here. Now this creates intriguing possibilities. Responsibilities, they're never intriguing. Possibilities for us, because if we've got a single file, well, we could have multiple files here. And this approach is based on a project I've been doing in the past couple of months that loops through 5 files that have football results in, so soccer results for you, Bob, and data from the games, and it loops through 5 different files doing all that analysis. So it means the client doesn't need to click through all of those files, saving them so much time. But in this case, today we're just going to work with a single file. So let's step through the code again, F8 key. So this workbook.path, that's going to kind of initialize in a second. And then in C3, we have range of data file there. And Excel, as you can see, the VBA concatenates, just combines together this string in order to get the file open. So let's see it one more time. And there we've got the file open. So let me know in the chat, guys, what questions do you want me to answer about this data? So Bart, what kind of questions are you trying to answer in your data? I think you said you're trying to get a record from the data across into the other file. Or is it that you want to answer some kind of data analysis type question? So for example, how many size M products do we have? Or how many sweaters do we have? Or how many products, you know, above 1775 do we have? Let me know some questions you want me to answer about this data, and we'll have a look at how to do that in a second. So finally with this code, we've got, well, this line of code. As Bob said, this is the line of code to actually open the workbook. So we've got the information being allocated to a string variable. Then we pair up that string variable with this workbooks.open command. Bob says, can you pull up a report based on the specifics of the data file? That's what we're aiming to do, Bob. That's what we're aiming to do. We're aiming to go to that data file and then pull up some kind of report, but that report doesn't exist yet. That's what we're going to build in this live stream. So you can be my customers. You can be my customers. Put yourself in the customer's shoes here and give me some tasks. Give me some information you want to know about this data. And obviously, I'm asking you to kind of pretend to do that, but that's going to help us in this live stream. Yep. So based on the specifics of this data file, Bart says, yes, I need a few parts of info from the other files, so not everything. Okay. So a few pieces of info. So let's say, what might we want to do? What might we want to do here? So let's say we want to know if product 58 appears in this file. And let's go ahead and write this down. Okay, so our question here. Question here is, does product 58 appear in the data? Okay, this is the question we're looking to answer. Does product 58 appear in the data? Does that sound reasonable to you, Bart? Bart says, for example, I need info from row A and row C. Excellent. So does product, so column A and column C, yeah. So does product 58 appear? And then let's say we want the SKU and we want the description. Okay, so the info from, we want the SKU and the description. So if the product does appear, we want to know the SKU and the description. Okay, so maybe we won't get through all that, but that's now we've got some direction. You know, this is what we're looking to do. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, let's close this file again. Okay, let's say target product here. Now I do want to open this file again, so I'm going to go through the code using the F8 key. Here's our file. So product 58 here. So I'm just going to copy this across. Then Control V, paste this in there, product 58. Okay. So you can see we can use this control file to configure what we're trying to do. That's why we've called it a control file. We're going to do something quite simple, but you can scale up this approach with more files and more products to do more complex things. Right. So first question, Alt F4, close this file. First question is going to be let's say get the target product. Okay, then does the target product appear in data file? Okay, there we go. Right, so let's assign. So we need to store this information, the product name, because we're going to be using it in the code. So let's go ahead and declare another variable here. Let's say prod name as string. String variable should work fine here. And an annotation here, name of the product. Okay, and here, let's assign that name. Okay, and here I've got to be careful because, okay, in fact, let's do it like this. So here I've got to be careful that I'm working with the right workbook, because just looking at this code, which workbook is going to be accurate when we get to here in the code? Let me know in the chat. Which workbook is going to be active, not accurate? Which code is going to be accurate when we get to this line of code? Well, the data file is going to be accurate. Yeah. So I've got to make sure that we're on the right file and on the right sheet. And here we are in C4. Okay, there we go. So put a new line of code in. What do we do when we put a new line of code in? It's good to test it straight away. So I'm going to hit the F8 key, step through the code. Okay, the file is open. And the name of the data file, I've allocated that to a variable. That's going to help us in a second. We're going to see. Okay, and then product name is product 58. So we've successfully allocated that information to a variable. Now it's in a variable, we can use it in the programming. A variable is just a place to store information. Bart says he's had a crash, but he's back. Good. Haven't missed too much, Bart. I don't think. We've just put close this file again. We've just put a cell here to give us a target product. Okay, so we want product 58 and we want to get information about product 58. So next, you can see my annotations helping me. My annotations helping me in the code. So does the target product appear in the data file? So we do have to make some questions here. We do have to make some decisions here. So what range are we going to look at in the data file? And we're going to assume, for this demonstration, we're going to assume that we only have a single sheet in the data file, but that might be different. So you might have to specify the sheet as well. So you can see we're using this control file to specify all of this information. Back to the VBA editor. It's going to use this to open the file again. So the range we're looking at, well, it's B5 all the way down to B104 is as far as this file goes down. As far as the data goes, this file is from the Excel VBA Real World Examples Series 2. Recent videos on the channel from that series, so you can go and download this file if you want to. But here you have to make some design decisions. What is the data range you're working with? Is the data you're working with, are rows likely to be added? Are rows likely to be taken away? Are columns likely to be added? So how do you resolve this? You should be communicating with your client all the time. You know, you can't add columns here. Okay, if they really need to add a column, then you would need to adopt a different approach. This is where client communication is so important. So we're just going to assume that there's no data going to be added to this file. Okay, if data was going to be added, you could make this range bigger, or you could apply a dynamic approach. To finding the end of the data. We might do that at the end. If somebody asked me in the chat, we could do that at the end. Thanks, Bart. Right. So we're going to say B5 to B104 as our target data range. So B5 to B104. Okay. Is this going to work? Right. Let's do the same thing as we did with the product name. Let's create a variable here. Let's say target name. Target range. range to look in. I'm using variables here to store this information, but you don't have to use the variables. It just makes the code writing easier. You could do this with kind of a long form code. You would have lots of expressions kind of joined together, but you don't have to use the variables. They just make things easier, and they will make the running of the code more efficient. So here we can use a with and end with here. This, I'm trying to use more with, end with in my coding, just to make things more efficient. Okay, let's just cut that. Then we compare that with. Sheets 1, dot range C4. Oh, got an error. I always like to try to have an error-free coding session, the perfect coding session, but it's not happening today. There we go. And this is, so target range. And this is going to be, looking at the spreadsheet, I can see this is going to be in C5. So you can see we're kind of tooling up here. We're getting the things we need in order to understand if this product name appears in the data file. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Bart says the file I'm using is dynamic. Okay, if it's dynamic, maybe we'll have a look at this at the end, but it depends how much time we're going to use. But you would have to do something like, so I have target range here. You could just have target cell, and then you need a range construct to give you the top of the cell, the top of the range, the cell address that's at the top of the range. Then you use .xl down to give you the cell at the bottom of the range. Okay, I think, yeah. Can you remember the Members Monday one? We did the dynamic drop-down menus. So it's the same approach we used to define that dynamic drop-down menu, I think, or maybe it wasn't. I think we used offset then to do that. But you can see in lots of my videos, I've used this. I think if you look in the Excel essential techniques for beginners series, 7 essential beginner techniques, we've used that technique there. Okay, so you can get, if you need to do it dynamically, you can do it dynamically. Right, so are these values being assigned to these variables properly? Well, again, let's close the other data file, Alt F4, back to the VBA editor, and the F8 key. Okay, file is open. Okay, so product name, okay, 58, and then target range B5 to B104. Good, so we're building a foundation here. As always, takes time. We go step by step, but doing it by step, steady and systematic keeps the stress level down. But here it gets more interesting. What techniques are we going to use to answer these questions? Bob, do you know? What techniques are we going to use? The question we want to ask is, we've got the name of the product and we've got the range to look in, but what formula is going to allow us to do this? We need a formula to tell us, does a value appear in a range? We need a formula to do that. So have a think about that. Bart says, I don't know the video name of your website, but I know what you are saying. Good. So it looks like this, Bart. Range. There you go. And this is the beginning of the range. This is the end of the range. The beginning of the range is going to be a single cell reference, and the end of the range is going to be that cell reference .end XL down. And that's going to give you that dynamic quality. You can see this technique on the channel, in various places on the channel. And if you can't, Bart, just send me an email and I'll send you a link to a video. Okay. So what formula is going to help us here, and how we're going to get this formula working? Yes, I do use it a lot, Bart. Yes. Range. Like offset. Yep. It's definitely one of the main tools in the toolbox. Right, so we're going to do, okay, how to do this. Okay, let's do this with a message box. We're going to say application.worksheet function. Now, application.worksheet function allows us to call a formula in the VBA editor, so we can get access to all the good stuff that the formula gives us, the functionality, without actually having a formula in the spreadsheet. How cool is that? Yes, we don't need to enter a formula into the spreadsheet, but we can get the information that the formula would give us by typing that formula, programming that formula in the VBA editor. That's what application.worksheet function does. Bob says, does item equal range.range? Not quite. Not sure whether to go through this now. I think we'll go through this now, actually. So for example, okay, let's say range B4, and then the second range dot end XL down dot select. Okay, so I'm just going to take this, pop it in here. So what's going to happen when I execute this line of code? Do you know what's going to happen? So hit the F8 key and I can see all of this code has been selected. Okay, so super powerful. That's the power of this dot end XL down construct here. We've also got dot end XL up, dot end XL to left, and dot end XL to right if you want to go left, right, up or down. So if you wanted a dynamic solution, then when we're kind of in the control file, rather than having a target range, you could just have a start cell. Have a start cell, assign that to a variable, just like we've done in our programming. And then rather than having this hard coded here, you'd use the variable name here and the variable name here. That would give you a dynamic solution to this. Okay. That only selects the column correct and not the entire cells. Yes, that's absolutely right, Bob. So we're looking to select a column here because we're going to use COUNTIF and match, which are just going to work with a single column. The piece of data that we're looking at, we know it appears in this column here. Yeah, so in this case, we're just going to look at a single column. Right. So what formula are we going to use? I think good. Bart says he understands. Excellent. So what formula are we going to use, guys? Do you know? So there's two things we want to establish. Firstly, does this data appear in the file? And secondly, what row is this data on in the file? Two questions to answer there. So now we're doing our conceptual understanding. Do you understand well in English what these formulae are doing? So firstly, we're going to go for COUNTIF firstly. So COUNTIF, we need two criteria here. And it's range and criteria. I always think it's criteria then range. If no next. Not quite sure what you mean there, Bob. Item equals row dot column. If no next. Yeah, I think, Bob, I think you're talking about how we might loop through the rows. And that's certainly a way we could do this. You know, we don't have to use application.worksheet function. We could loop down the rows to find that value. That would be one way to do it. I think it's slightly more efficient. It's slightly more efficient using a worksheet function here, but that's a possible approach. We could loop through these cells until we get to our target cell, which is product 58, and then we'd do something else. So that's possible. I think that's the approach in the 7 essential VBA techniques, Bob. I think that's actually the approach we use. We're going to try COUNTIF today, and I think it's slightly more efficient COUNTIF than actually looping down the range. Now here you're going to see why it's useful to have why it's useful to have this information in variables. Now it's going to save us some code. I'm going to go ahead and say with workbooks other file dot sheets 1. Okay, and then end with this. What on earth does this mean? Can you see how this is all coming together? So because we've got multiple files open, we've got to be very careful about which file we're working on. The easiest way is when you're putting the code in, to be specific, be explicit in the code about the file that you want Excel to work with. Don't rely on this workbook being active. And this is one way we can do it. Now, other file, in fact, let's just go through the code quickly here. Okay, can't go through the code yet. Just show you how this is working. Okay. Maybe that's because the file is currently open. See, when you start working with multiple files, it goes up, the difficulty goes up an order of magnitude, but it's worth it when you get everything open though. Okay, the file is open. Now you'll notice we've allocated the name of that data file to a variable. We can now use that variable here to make sure Excel is looking at the right file. Okay, and we can now say here, dot range. So, and what's the range going to be? Target range. Of course. There we go. Just going to switch over to the other side here. Okay, and then prod name is the value that we're looking at here. We're looking for. What do you think? Looks quite complicated, that. Now, these application.worksheet functions, they never work first time because it's just difficult. Typing in, it's like trying to write a formula without the assistance you usually get from Excel, without having those prompts you get from Excel, without writing it in the formula editor at the top there. So it can be quite difficult. Let's see what happens here. I'm going to close the other file, of course. Alt F4, close this file, back to the VBA editor. Let's just go for it. Let's try running this code with the F5 key. And what's going to happen now? What do you think? We'll probably get an error, but let's see how we do. Okay, we've got a 5 here. Interesting. So we didn't get an error, but we did get a 5. Interesting stuff. So what's that saying? Anybody know in the chat what that's saying to us? Well, because we're doing count if, that's telling us how many times does the target product we're looking for, product 58, how many times does it appear in the data set? How could we prove that? Well, we could prove that by going into the data file and inputting here the formula into the spreadsheet. So it's going to do the same thing as what we just did in VBA, but this is going to be in the spreadsheet. And the range, Control Shift down, and the criteria using the arrow keys on the keyboard, of course. And then we can see we've got 5 there. So we've done the same thing 2 different ways, which is a good testing approach. And Bart, yeah, well done, Bart, you got it in the chat. So this product appears 5 times in the list. So hopefully already, Bart, you're seeing how we can get information from another file without opening the file manually ourselves and without having to have building formulae into the file. But we're just scraping the surface. It's going to get even more exciting. Okay, so this seems to be working well. So here we're going to have an if statement now. Okay. Then an end if. So I've fallen behind. Bart says I understand, thank you. So I've fallen behind on my annotations, my comments here. So we're going to say if the target product is found in the file. And then, as is good practice, or my style with annotations, I'll take the annotation, put it at the end of the statement, whether it's a loop or an if statement or something else, or with, and then just say end there. So if our product appears in this file, then we're just going to take the first instance of the product. In this case, we're going to make a simplification there. Now, if you wanted to take all of the products, then how would you do it? Well, that's where Bob's approach is going to help us. If you looped through each entry here, going down each entry, you could check across, and is the value in this cell the target value? If it is, then we're going to take some data across. Okay. We're going to stick with our application.worksheet function approach. So this is just going to take the first value in the file. How's it going to work? Well, we're going to go ahead and declare another variable here. We're going to say target row. We're going to say integer, so probably under 32,000. A row that target product is on. Yeah, I mean, Bart's saying in the chat, yeah, testing I call one of the Excel meta skills. So the meta skills are the way to actually get better at Excel. If you're good at testing, you're going to get better at Excel. And good testing means, well, things like having multiple screens, having the VBA editor on one screen, having Excel on the other screen, being able to compare them, or even if you're on a single screen, being able to use the Windows key, hold down the Windows key on the left arrow, Windows key on the right arrow, being able to do that and lining up the windows next to each other on a single screen. That's also a great testing setup. And then step through the code using the F8 key, debug and step into here, and then just watching what happens. When this line of code is executed, what happens? This is a great testing approach. And if you can just get good at testing, you're going to get so much better at Excel because it's a meta skill. Okay, so target row. And what formula are we going to use here? Do you know? Can anybody tell me what formula we're going to use here? And we're going to use match. So what's the value that we're looking for? We're looking for this product name. And then the range. Well, the range is going to be target range, of course. So you can see again, our variables are really helping us here. And then 0 is the final argument here. Okay. So sometimes when I'm doing application.worksheet function, I find it's good to go back into the spreadsheet and just check the formula and just check the components of the formula here. I just want to check the match type. Yeah, 0 is exact match. So that's the match we want. So this is a good quick way to kind of refresh the arguments, the components in the formula, because in the VBA editor, of course, we don't get those prompts. Okay, so this should give us the target row. So now if once we execute this line of code, this is going to give us, it's not quite the row, is it? It's going to be the distance down this data range. So we can maybe add 4 onto this to give us the row. Let's do that now, actually. In fact, let's just see what happens here. So close the file, close the data file. I told you it's a little bit labor intensive working with multiple files, but it's worth it once you get everything working. Okay, stepping through the code using the F8 key. File is open, values assigned to variables. We don't need this anymore. Get rid of U. So that's the beauty of stepping through the code. You can live edit the code, see there's an error in that line, fix it, and the routine is still running. Brilliant stuff. I just love Excel VBA. So this gives us our count if. So this is more than 0, which is why we've gone into the conditional statement here, and target row is not working for us. Okay, so what's happened there? Yep, can you see the problem here? So rather than just saying target range, I need to say, yeah, that's a classic error that you're going to make. Well, if you're as bad as me anyway, you're going to make when you're working with multiple files. So I didn't specify the file that I wanted to work with. So Excel would have been looking in the control file, in the other file. It would have been looking for a match here with our product name, and clearly the product doesn't appear in this range. This is why we got an error here. Okay, but no problem. Save the file, close the other file, Alt F4. And then again, stepping through the code, F8 key, file is open. Okay, and target row, just hovering over the cursor there, and we've got target row equals 9. So what's that saying to us? Well, how does match work? Well, match tells us how far down a column a particular value is, or how far across a row a particular value is. So we're getting a value of 9. So we can go and test this now. If I just adjust that range so that there's 9 values in there, we can see we've got the 9th value in the range. Okay, so that's good. So that tells us how far down the range this value is. It's going to be easier if we get the row. So that 9 we want to adjust, if you like, into 13. We can do that by simply adding 4, because we've got 4 rows at the top, adding 4 onto this value. So again, this is another assumption to make. We're going to hard code this into VBA. So you've got to communicate with your client here. I've made the assumption that you're not going to add any rows up here like this. That's the assumption I've made. So again, good communication with the client is key here. So we're going to go ahead and say +4. Okay, Control S, save the file, close the other file, Alt F4, save changes, don't save. Okay, then into VBA. Okay. Then now we've got target row has gone to a value of 13, and that makes sense because our target product is on row 13. So let's try a different product just to test this. So for example, product 21 should give us row 12. So back to our, and here you're beginning to see the power of this approach. I can go back to the control file, change a value in the spreadsheet, in the sheet, and it's going to be reflected in the code. I think product 21 we wanted. Back to the VBA editor, running the code here again. I'm just going to use the F8 key and target row. Now we've got a value of 9, and product 21 is on row 9 there. The first occurrence of product 21. I'm assuming that we're talking about the first occurrence. Again, if you needed multiple occurrences, you would have to loop through the rows. That's perfectly possible. I've also done that approach. Cool. So okay, let's have target products here. Okay, let's have target product SKU and target product description. And then of course we're going to resize the rows here. Alt HOW 25 should do it, I reckon. Perfect. So whatever file we have specified here, whatever product we have specified here, we want the SKU and the description. We want to do that at the click of a button. Let's go ahead and put a button in now. And insert button. Going to use the Alt key here. And let's put our button up here. And it's going to be analyze other file. Informative caption on the button. Let's just say get info. You know what I like doing on these buttons is using symbols. Using symbols on these buttons. This is what I was doing today. So if you go to insert and then symbol over here, then you get access to this symbols window. Yeah, and Windings gives you various cool, well, fairly cool, vaguely communicative symbols here. Webdings is also cool. So you just go to this little menu at the top, go to Webdings, and then what did I use today? I used some of these icons today. I'm trying to find the specific one I used, but it's not jumping out at me at the moment. Oh yeah, I used this one here because I put a macro in a file to send an email. So to take some information from the file and send the email to a client. Super cool. I wish I could show you this file. It's so cool. So this is the icon I used on the button. So rather than using text on the button, there's a nice icon on the button. So you might want to consider that in your practice. And Bart says you never use that on a button. I just think icons are cool. I just try to minimize the amount of text as far as possible. People tend to understand icons easier than having to process all the letters in a piece of text. So I try to maximize the use of icons as far as possible. You've also got options up here now, illustrations. Then you've got icons here. Now I haven't even started using these icons, but this looks really exciting. So maybe I should start to use these more. You got some really nice icons there. Good. Anyway, we want the product SKU and the product description. So can we get this task done? How long have we been on? Been on about 45 minutes. So, okay, so that looks good. Okay, another with and with this workbook dot sheets 1. So we're going to get the information back into our original workbook. Remember, we want to populate these cells now. So C10 and C11, range C10 C10 equals. Okay, so, and this is where we're going to, again, leverage these variables. So workbooks, this is going to be other workbook, other file it is, sheets 1, and it's going to be, so this is the SKU. Let's go back to the data file, and the SKU is in column C. So we're going to say C and then concatenate that, and can you see the final step here to really get everything working really smoothly here. So we're going to concatenate that with the ampersand and then target row, the target row variable. Remember, we've got some information stored in there, and then end with. And here we're going to transfer info about target row to first file, to control file, more accurately. File, right. Okay. So shall we go ahead now and just, we've been carefully stepping through the code, which I highly recommend, but at some point you've got to go ahead and just run the code. So make sure you've saved your files. Okay, I'm just going to hit get info. I'd like some information to appear in C10. Get info, file is open. Okay. And we have something in C10. So S1738. S1738 is that product 21. Product 21, S1738. Yeah, that does appear to be accurate. Right, very good. Okay, and then what's the other information we need? And we're in C11 now. And it's the description, and the description is in the next column, is in column D. Okay. So now we've got information in 2 cells. So we should have information coming into 2 cells. Right, and something else I'm going to do. Did you see when we ran the macro last time, we finished on the wrong workbook? Yeah, now this can be really annoying for users. Make sure you get back to the right workbook or the right sheet, and ideally give them a message box too, telling them that something has happened. So let's do that. Let's say this workbook, so a course, which is the workbook that contains the code, .activate. Let's have a message box at the end, and info imported for, and then let's have the product name here. Okay, product name, just prod name. Okay, then we need 0, then we need complete. This formulation I use all the time when I'm working with message boxes. So here we have some text concatenated, joined together with a variable, which gives it this dynamic quality. That message box is going to change for each different product name, so it just gives it that dynamic feel, and customers seem to love this. Right, so get info. Okay, there we go. So product 21 is a white sweater. Product 21 is a white sweater. Fantastic. So our original product was product 58. Okay, get info, and there you can see S1775, a purple t-shirt. S1775, and it is a purple t-shirt there. Cool. Okay, so we can see how we're bringing this information in. What else would we want to do? Shall we see if we can close the file? Close the file. Now, what Bart says cool, perfect, excellent, Bart, good to see. I think, let me know, Bart, is that kind of answering your question? I mean, this approach, I've shown one example, but this is so flexible, this approach. You could loop through multiple files, for example, loop through multiple products. You know, you could build a table with your target products here. But the basics are all here, working with different files, specifying the range on the different files, using application.worksheet function because we don't have to go to the other file and put formally in there. So we use application.worksheet function, then finally importing some information back in once we've established the position of the target data that we're looking for. I'll say yes, I think so. Good. Let's say other file dot close, and I think we should say save changes equals false. What do you think? Is that going to work? Is that going to work? Don't think that's going to work. Feels like that needs something else, but anyway, let's see what happens. Wow, that did seem to work. Very nice. Can you see that? It's just, oh God, I think if anybody could see that, they would say, oh, Excel VBA, it's going to change my life. It's going to change the lives of my team. It's going to change the lives of my staff. You know, just this one example, I think it's super powerful. Let's make it a bit smoother. Let's say turn off the screen updating, then turn it back on at the end. Okay, cool. Right, let's change the product number again. 21, get info. Okay, lovely. Do we have product 60 there? One thing we could do with this code is, if the product name isn't found, then we want to tell the user and exit. So if the product name is found, then this application.worksheet function countif, the countif formula is going to return a value of more than 1 because the product is in the data range. If the product isn't in the data range, then let's just exit the routine. Product not found. Let's just say check and exit sub. And we'd also want to close the other file because the other file is going to be open, of course. Cool. So this kind of safeguards us when we have just some silly information here. What's going to happen now? Product not found. Okay, perfect. Good. Good, there we go. Let's put another one in. Something like this. Okay, and then we've got our product there. Cool. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So Bart's saying, I'll try to make it safely and when the file location will change. Yep. So we've got the file name here, but you could also have the file path in a cell. You could have the file path in a cell too, and then use the value in the cell in the code just here when you're configuring this path to open variable. I've assumed that both of the files are in the same folder. If they're somewhere else, you can type the path into the spreadsheet somewhere and then use that information with the variable. Maybe with a pop-up to type the link. That's possible, Bart, but the thing about having an input box to type the link is the user's going to make a mistake. Okay, it's likely the user's going to make a mistake. I would try something like this. So for example, take the path here, Where can we go here? Take the path. Okay, Control C. And there it would look something like this bot. Okay. Something like this, and then that path you're going to take and join it with the file name. Okay, now this means the path is in the spreadsheet, so you can manipulate the text just like you'll manipulate any other entry in the spreadsheet. Good. I mean, but I would say, Bart, this is quite a complex thing to do. This is right at the top end of what I do for my customers, because it's super powerful. You've just had a taste of that. And I have a situation, the customer I work for in sports betting. He has a few processes like this where we go through multiple files. I think we go through about 18 files. So we've got a big table that's got, the file names, and then the sheet to look at in the file, and then the starting cell in the file. We've got a table with all of that information in there. And then the routine loops through all of these files, gets all the information and collates it in a single file. Super powerful, but it's not much more complex than the routine we've created here. So all of the kind of principles and all of the building blocks are here for you. Okay, good. I'm not sure if Bob's still with us, but thanks very much, Bob. It's been another good live stream. I think we've got lots covered there. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next Monday. Actually, Members Monday. This next one is not going to be on Monday because I'm going on Christmas holiday. So we're going to do Members Monday on the Friday. Okay, Members Monday this Friday at about probably again around 6 o'clock UK time. Before Members Monday, I'm going to do a live stream for the whole channel. Good to hear you still here, Bob. So on Friday, this Friday, about 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm going to do a live stream for everybody. And then after that, we'll go straight into Members Monday. So hopefully we'll bring a few more people into Members Monday, but we'll see. Let me know for Friday. So Bob, I know you got something you're working on. If you want to send me something, we'll try to do something with that. Or Bart, if you got anything else you want to do with this, we can try to do that as well. Okay, brilliant stuff, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it too. And I'll see you very soon. Take care.